All right, so today we're gonna dive into something pretty fascinating. I think we've got some excerpts from a live news feed, and it covers this meeting between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky,
Oh, yeah.
and it's in the Oval Office.
Okay.
And we're gonna kind of go through and see what we can learn from it.
Sounds good.
I think it's a really interesting meeting to look at for all sorts of reasons. But just to set the stage a little bit, this is a meeting that on the surface, starts out pretty friendly.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are these hints that, things maybe aren't as peachy keen as they might seem on the surface.
Right. Yeah. You have to remember the context too, right? Like
Exactly.
this is a really pivotal time, I think, in U.S.-Ukraine relations.
Yeah.
And Zelensky's coming to the White House. I mean, he needs a lot from the U.S.
Yeah, he does a lot.
Yeah.
And Trump's got his own, sort of agenda going on too.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's trying to, he's got a lot of balls in the air, right? On the world stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting to kind of see how these two personalities interact and what their priorities are.
Well, and speaking of that interaction,
Yeah.
at the beginning of this news feed, you really get this sense that, they're trying to, put on a good show.
Right. Yeah.
There's this quote from Trump where he says, it's great to finally have you here,
Yeah.
like they're old pals or something.
Right, right.
But, even from the start, you kind of get the feeling that there's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it from Zelensky's perspective, right? I mean, Ukraine at this time is really they're in a tough spot.
Oh, totally.
They're dealing with, pressure from Russia, they're dealing with internal political divisions. They really need the US on their side.
They need money. They need military support.
Exactly.
Right.
They need all of that and they need it, pretty desperately. And so, Zelensky's got to be thinking, okay, how do I make sure that Trump, is going to be there for us?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, Trump's thinking about, okay, what's in this for the US?
Right.
How does supporting Ukraine help me, achieve my goals?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot more going on beneath the surface than just, two guys, shaking hands and smiling for the cameras.
For sure.
Mm.
For sure. Well, let's kind of move ahead a little bit because I'm curious about when things start to kind of go off the rails a little bit.
Yeah.
Where do you see that shift in tone in the news feed?
Well, you start to see it, I mean, it's subtle at first,
Yeah.
but you start to see it when the conversation turns to military aid.
Okay.
The news feed starts using words like disagreement and tension.
Hmm.
And you can kind of read between the lines a little bit and sense that, things are getting a little bit heated.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you can feel the temperature in the room kind of going up.
Right,
Don't make
exactly.
sense.
Yeah, and there's this one quote from Zelensky that really kind of jumps out at me where he says, Ukraine is on the front line defending democracy.
Yeah.
And, that to me is like a really direct appeal to Trump. He's basically saying, look, we're not just doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for the whole, free world.
Yeah.
And he's also kind of implying that if Ukraine falls, that's bad news for everybody.
And that the U.S. should step up.
Exactly. Yeah, he's basically saying, we need your help and we need it now.
Well, so then what does Trump say to that?
So Trump, he's a little bit more cautious in his response.
Yeah.
He expresses concerns about corruption in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And, he talks about the need for European allies to, shoulder more of the burden,
Yeah.
kind of step up and,
Yeah.
and do their part. Exactly. And you can kind of see where he's coming from, right? I mean, he's thinking about, the American taxpayer. He's
Mhm.
thinking about, his own political, base.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't want to just, write a blank check to Ukraine without, getting something in return.
Yeah. It seems like he's trying to, leverage the situation a little bit, maybe.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's definitely playing hardball.
Yeah.
And that's where the real tension comes in, right? Because you've got these two leaders with these very different perspectives.
Right. One guy's pleading for help and the other guy's kind of, trying to cut a deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the money or the military aid. It's about, this fundamental question of what is the U.S.-Ukraine relationship really about?
Yeah. And what are each side's responsibilities?
Exactly. Yeah. And that tension, I think, is something that we see play out, in the years that follow.
I mean, it seems like this meeting kind of sets the stage for a lot of the the challenges and the issues that come up later on.
It does. It really does. And, it makes you wonder, right? Like, what if things had gone differently in that meeting?
Right.
What if they had been able to, find more common ground?
Yeah.
Would things have played out the same way?
It's hard to say, but it definitely makes you think.
It does. It really does.
So, we started off talking about how, this meeting was really interesting because it kind of, starts out friendly, but then you see these hints of tension. I think it's safe to say that by the end of this news feed, that tension is pretty much out in the open.
It is, yeah.
And it's really kind of set the stage for a very, complex and at times difficult relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine.
Yeah. And I think it's a relationship that's still evolving, right?
Oh, for sure.
We're still trying to figure out, what that relationship is supposed to look like.
Yeah, what are the expectations, on both sides?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. I think, we've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
But it's definitely given us a lot to think about.
It has. And, I think the big question that I'm left with is, what does this meeting tell us about the future of U.S.-Ukraine relations?
Yeah.
Is this a sign of things to come, or is it just a blip on the radar?
Right.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we all need to be thinking about.
For sure.
Because what happens between the U.S. and Ukraine has implications for, the whole world.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's something that we need to be paying attention to.
It is, and we will be.
Okay.
All right, well, thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great.
And we'll see you next time.
All right, sounds good.